Have you ever noticed how, with almost everything in the physical world, there's this really clean, undeniable equation of effort and reward?
Oh, absolutely. It's very comforting, honestly.
Right, it is. You apply a certain magnitude of force and you get a proportional result. Like, you go
Mhm.
to the gym, you lift the heavy weights, and your muscles adapt.
Yeah, cause and effect.
Exactly. You sit down, you study a complex subject for a vast constellation of hours, and you acquire the knowledge. You exert the force, the object moves. It just makes sense to our eyes, and to our logic.
It's entirely Newtonian. I mean, we are fundamentally conditioned to expect reality to behave like a simple vending machine.
A vending machine. Yes.
You put the effort in, you press the button, and the transformation just drops out.
You get your snack. But then you step into the realm of personal transformation.
Oh, a machine breaks.
Completely breaks. You decide you are going to genuinely, fundamentally shift the trajectory of your reality, and suddenly that fundamental law of physics seems completely broken. I think anyone who has ever tried to break a deeply ingrained habit, or, I don't know, change their financial baseline, or alter the kinds of relationships they attract, knows exactly what I'm talking about here.
They've hit the wall.
They've hit the wall. Imagine you are standing at the helm of a mighty ship. You are striving with this endless tide of effort to steer it toward a completely new horizon, and you're doing everything right.
At least everything you were taught was right.
Yeah, exactly. You are holding the vision, you are doing the mental exercises, you are cultivating the desire, the sails are perfectly positioned, the rigging is tight, the weather seems clear.
But the ship barely moves.
The ship barely moves. Or, honestly worse, it drifts backward.
Right.
You constantly encounter this invisible wall. It feels as though an unseen force is actively resisting your progress, scrambling your intentions before they can even take root. You are rowing, you are steering, you are exhausting yourself with sheer willpower, but the shoreline is only getting further away.
And it is exhausting. I mean, we
Wow.
really need to emphasize that. It is a profound state of exhaustion.
Yeah.
We aren't just talking about being tired at the end of a long workday. We're talking about a deep structural, spiritual, and mental fatigue.
Because you're putting the coins in the vending machine and nothing is happening.
Exactly. When you exert a massive magnitude of energy and the architecture of your life remains stubbornly unchanged, it breeds a very specific kind of despair. It leaves you questioning the very fabric of your own potential. You start to think, maybe I am simply not capable. Maybe this is just my lot in life.
Right. Maybe I just don't have the willpower. We internalize the failure.
Always.
We blame our work ethic, or we blame our circumstances. We blame the economy, our upbringing, our boss, the city we live in. We look everywhere for the leak in the boat.
Because we need a logical reason for why we are sinking.
Exactly. But what we are exploring today completely upends that traditional idea of why we fail. The challenge is not about external misfortune. It is not about bad luck. And it is certainly not about a lack of effort.
It rarely is about effort. I mean, the people who are the most stuck are often the ones trying the hardest.
Yeah, they are sweating the most.
They're burning a massive amount of fuel, but the engine's in neutral.
Which brings us to the core of this conversation. What is actually happening in the water beneath that ship?
Right.
If it isn't bad luck or laziness, what is the resistance? The premise we are unpacking today suggests that the resistance comes from the presence of invisible mental contagions,
Yes.
insidious, non-physical frequency corruptors, afflictions that breach the boundaries of space and time, silently infecting the mind and altering the vibratory signature of your intentions.
And we really need to pause right here and clarify what we mean by these terms, because it can sound very well abstract at first glance.
A bit sci-fi almost.
Right. We have to elevate this conversation from mere behavioral psychology into the actual mechanics of how consciousness interacts with physical reality.
Okay, lay it out for us.
These contagions are not poetic metaphors. They are literal, functional corruptors of the energy you project. They are the silent static that prevents the manifestation of a desired reality.
The static? I love that word for this. Imagine trying to tune a beautifully crafted vintage radio to a crystal clear symphony.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
The internal mechanisms of the radio are flawless. The broadcast station across the country is sending out an absolute masterpiece. But there is a powerful silent static overriding the signal in the atmosphere itself.
Right.
You sit there in your living room, increasingly frustrated, smacking the side of the radio, turning the dials until they break, completely unaware that the interference is saturating the air in the room.
because you can't see it.
You can't see it.
Yeah.
We are trying to fix our habits, our routines, our diets. We are adjusting the dials when the air we are breathing is corrupted.
That is the exact mechanism. You cannot receive the symphony if the medium of transmission is full of distortion.
So our goal for this discussion is to map out this unseen territory. We're going to uncover the fundamental quintet of these mental contagions, the 5 primary afflictions that silently govern human behavior.
Yes, the big 5.
We are going to explore the universal law that ruthlessly magnifies these hidden frequencies. And most importantly, we are going to look at how to master the ultimate alchemy of concentration.
Which is the cure.
The cure, exactly. How to transmute these afflictions so we can actually get the ship moving. Because there is a massive difference between merely surviving the passage of eras, just existing, avoiding disaster, paying the bills, and truly mastering the architecture of reality.
Survival is an act of endurance. Mastery is an act of creation.
I love that.
And to bridge the gap between those two states, we have to deeply understand the architecture of these invisible contagions.
So let's start right there. The word contagion inherently makes us think of biology.
Right, illness.
Yeah, a virus, a bacterial infection, something that requires a physical vector. Someone sneezes on a subway or you touch a contaminated door handle. Physical contagions are strictly confined by material boundaries.
They're limited by physics.
Right. They need proximity, they need fluid, they need time to incubate. But these mental afflictions operate on a completely different plane.
Precisely. They exist on a metaphysical plane, which completely removes them from the constraints of the physical world.
Okay.
In the physical realm, we are bound by the illusions of space and time. A physical illness needs time to multiply within the host, but because these mental contagions are metaphysical, they transcend those illusions.
So they don't need time.
No. Their transmission is not measured in days or hours, it is instantaneous.
I want to make sure we ground this because metaphysical transmission sounds like a magic trick.
It sounds esoteric, sure.
But we actually experience this all the time, don't we? Have you ever walked into a room right after 2 people had a vicious, screaming argument?
Oh, wow. Yes.
They might not be speaking when you walk in. They might be completely silent looking at their phones. But the second you cross the threshold, your stomach tightens.
You can cut the tension with a knife.
Exactly. You can feel the density in the air.
Because you are picking up on the frequency. Consciousness is inherently contagious. On a level beyond the physical, everything is interconnected.
We're all on the same grid.
Every mind is part of a vast, unseen network. So these frequency corruptors spread seamlessly across the collective consciousness. They are transmitted through the very fabric of everyday societal interactions.
So it happens when you, say, open up a social media feed and scroll through a barrage of catastrophic news, outrage, and despair.
Yeah.
You haven't physically moved, you haven't spoken to anyone, but within moments, your heart rate elevates, your jaw clenches, and your baseline mood drops.
You have been infected.
Infected just from looking at a screen. Every piece of media consumed, every casual conversation with a friend that devolves into complaining about how fundamentally unfair the world is, these act as instant transmission vectors.
We are constantly swimming in an invisible sea of transmission. And the reason this matters so profoundly is because of how reality itself is structured.
Okay, let's get into that structure.
Ultimately, reality is a materialization of frequency.
Okay, let's unpack that. Reality is a materialization of frequency. How does that actually work mechanically? I mean, I'm looking at my desk right now. It feels pretty solid.
Right, it feels physical. But think of intention and physical reality not as 2 entirely separate categories of existence.
Okay.
Think of them as identical states of energy existing at entirely different vibratory rates.
Oh, like
It is the exact same relationship as steam and ice.
steam and ice. Okay, that makes sense. They are both H2O. They possess the exact same fundamental essence.
Yes. The only difference between steam and a block of ice is the rate at which their molecules are vibrating.
Right. One is fast and loose. The other is slow and packed together.
In this context, your mind, your focused intention, your internal state, that is the steam, it is highly active, invisible, and malleable.
And the ice.
The physical circumstances of your life, the balance in your bank account, the home you live in, the health of your physical body, the dynamics of your relationships, that is the ice. It is the same energy, just solidified onto the physical plane. It has crystallized.
Wow. So for the steam to properly condense and freeze into the beautiful structured ice sculpture you want, the environment has to be perfectly conditioned. The frequency has to be pure. But these mental contagions, this ambient despair, this normalized anxiety we pick up from the collective, they act as that powerful static.
Exactly. They corrupt the pure vibratory signature of the steam.
So what happens to the ice?
When you are attempting to materialize a new reality, the purity and strength of your frequency are paramount. If that frequency is infected by a mental contagion, the signal becomes scrambled.
Right.
The structural integrity of the reality you are trying to build simply collapses before it can ever materialize into the physical world. The ice forms, but it is cracked, cloudy, and misshapen.
This makes so much sense of why someone can recite daily affirmations, visualize their goals with incredible intensity every morning, and then spend the remaining hours of the day marinating in a state of stressed out, overwhelmed anxiety.
And nothing changes.
And nothing in their life changes. The 10 minutes of pure intention cannot compete with a constant background hum of corrupted frequency.
It's like trying to freeze pure water while constantly pouring mud into the mold.
Right. But this raises a huge red flag for me. It's actually a pretty frightening thought.
What is the red flag?
Well, if these contagions are invisible and their transmission is instantaneous, how can you ever know you are infected until the damage is already done? You cannot take your metaphysical temperature. You cannot swab your brain to see if you have contracted a frequency of scarcity today.
It is a vital question, because the conscious mind is incredibly adept at lying to itself.
Oh, we're the best at it.
We tell ourselves we are fine, we are optimistic, we are working hard. I'm not anxious, I'm just busy.
Right, right.
But there is an absolute, undeniable diagnostic tool at your disposal, and it never lies.
What is it?
It is the perpetual state of your external circumstances.
The environment itself is the symptom.
Always. Your reality is the direct, unedited printout of your internal frequency.
Unedited printout. That's good.
If the reality surrounding you feels chaotic, if it feels perpetually stagnant, if you find yourself running into the exact same archetype of a toxic relationship over and over again.
Or the exact same financial roadblock time and time again.
Yes, that is the symptom. It is an absolute indicator that the internal frequency has been compromised by these unseen disruptors. If the external is broken, the internal signal is scrambled. Period.
So the chaos is not happening to you.
No.
The chaos is a perfect reflection of what has unknowingly infected you. The external world is just the diagnostic monitor. If the screen is showing static, you don't take a hammer to the screen.
You check the signal.
You check the signal.
Precisely. And understanding why the signal is scrambled requires us to look at where these contagions actually force our consciousness to reside.
Okay, where do they send us?
Because they do not just act as passive static. They actively relocate your awareness. They hijack the control room of your mind.
Let's get into the mechanics of that hijacking. The idea here is that these afflictions literally drop our awareness into the most ancient, primitive structures of the brain. They trap us in the primal mind.
Yes. On a biological, neurological level, we are talking about structures like the amygdala and the basal ganglia, often referred to as the primal or reptilian brain.
The ancient hardware.
This is the oldest software of the human system.
Mm-hmm.
On a metaphysical level, this corresponds to pure survival consciousness.
Okay.
When an individual is infected by mental contagions, like fear or chronic worry, their mind is forced to operate almost entirely from this fundamental survival level.
And a mind operating in survival mode has a very specific, very narrow, incredibly rigid agenda.
Extremely narrow.
It is not writing poetry, it is not inventing revolutionary new technologies, and it is certainly not manifesting a grand, expansive, abundant future.
Its sole exclusive concern is physical continuity. It is obsessed with avoiding immediate danger, securing the next meal, and maintaining the status quo at all costs.
Just keep breathing, don't die.
Exactly. The primal brain operates on a very simple algorithm.
Mm.
I survived yesterday doing exactly what I did. Therefore, any change to my routine, my environment, or my identity is a potential threat to my survival. Do not change anything.
Okay, I have to push back here because this is where my logic trips up a bit.
Go ahead.
Isn't the survival instinct our greatest asset? I mean, it is literally the reason humanity made it out of the ancestral savanna.
Sure.
It keeps the heart beating, it keeps the lungs breathing, it floods our system with adrenaline so we can pull our hand away from a hot stove. Why is self-preservation suddenly being framed as this massive obstacle to human potential?
It is a valid point of confusion, and the distinction is crucial. We must differentiate between biological self-preservation and creative evolution.
Okay, draw that line for me.
Biological survival is, of course, absolutely necessary. It keeps the physical vessel intact. But existing purely in that frequency creates a closed, suffocating loop.
Because you never grow.
Exactly. There's an overwhelming magnitude of difference between merely avoiding destruction and actively generating a new reality.
So biological survival is the foundation. It's the floor. But we treat it like the ceiling.
That is beautifully put. When you are stuck in survival consciousness, your biological resources, your blood flow, your oxygen, your energetic focus, are routed away from the higher executive functions of the brain.
The creative parts.
Right, the prefrontal cortex, which is responsible for long-term planning, complex problem solving, and creative visualization, essentially goes offline.
It just shuts down.
Survival consciousness acts as a heavy iron lock on your potential. It actively prevents the activation of the higher balanced centers of the mind that are absolutely required for pure creation and intentional materialization.
It's like trying to architect a magnificent, towering skyscraper while you are cowering in an underground bunker waiting for an airstrike.
Yes.
You can't draft blueprints when you are terrified of the ceiling caving in.
Yeah.
You are just trying to make it to tomorrow.
That is the exact physiological and metaphysical state.
Yeah.
And it actually goes even deeper than that.
Deeper than the bunker.
Yes. When you operate continuously from this primal center for a long enough time, something fascinating and terrifying happens. The old version of yourself, the identity built around your past traumas, your current limitations, your normalized fears, actually becomes an autonomous, energetic entity.
Wait, slow down. An autonomous entity. You mean the old version of me takes on a life of its own? Like a separate personality?
In a functional sense, yes. Think about how a habit forms. At first, it takes conscious effort, like learning to drive a car.
Right. 10 and 2, check the mirrors.
But over time, the neural pathways become so thick, so insulated, that the habit runs itself. It requires no conscious input. You just drive home and don't even remember the commute.
Autopilot.
Metaphysically, your normalized state of lack or fear compounds into a distinct energetic signature. It becomes a standalone program running in the background. And just like any living organism, its primary directive is to survive.
So it fights back.
It actively fights to survive.
Yeah.
Just like an animal viciously defends its territory, your old identity resists any evolutionary leap that would require its dissolution.
Oh, wow.
When you decide to change your life, when you decide to become wealthy or healthy or peaceful, you are effectively threatening the life of the old you. You are telling the anxious, struggling version of yourself that it is time to die.
And the primal brain registers that metaphorical death as a literal biological threat.
Yes. The basal ganglia does not know the difference between the death of your ego and the death of your physical body.
That is wild.
So survival consciousness will deploy every trick, every doubt, every wave of anxiety, and every manufactured crisis to keep you exactly where you are. Because where you are is known.
Even if it's awful.
Exactly. To the primal mind, the known is safe, even if the known is completely miserable.
That explains so much. It explains why we self-sabotage right when things are starting to go well.
It's a defense mechanism.
You get the promotion, you meet the amazing partner, you finally start seeing progress in your health, and suddenly a wave of inexplicable anxiety hits you.
You start picking fights.
Yes. Or you sleep through your alarm, or you blow your budget. It isn't because you were broken. It is the old autonomous entity pulling the emergency brake because the new reality feels unsafe simply because it is unfamiliar.
It is attempting to restore the familiar baseline of the frequency. You cannot generate an abundant, expansive reality while your internal command center is entirely consumed by the fear of losing what little you currently possess. You are trapped in a loop.
Okay, so if we are trapped in this primal survival loop, locked in the bunker, fighting our own obsolete programming, we have to understand how the broader cosmos, the architecture of reality itself, responds to that state of being.
Right. What happens outside the bunker?
Because if there is one thing that becomes devastatingly clear when you study this, it is that the universe does not intervene.
No.
It does not reach down and pull you out of the bunker.
No, it does not rescue. It reflects.
It reflects.
And this leads us to the core mechanics of universal interaction. The absolute foundational mechanism of how consciousness interacts with reality, the universal law of magnification.
The law of magnification. This feels like the hinge upon which all of this turns. Let's break this down thoroughly.
We must begin by discarding a very common, very pervasive illusion. Most of us operate under the assumption that there is an absolute, objective, external reality.
Right. a world out there that is just happening, and we are tiny, helpless observers being tossed around by its currents.
Exactly. The idea that the economy is an objective force, the housing market is an objective force, people's behavior toward us is objective. We think we are just reacting to the facts of the world.
That's how it feels.
But the mechanics suggest otherwise. There is no objective reality waiting out there to happen to you.
Really? None at all.
None. There is only the reality that the internal subconscious mind has accepted, crystallized, and projected outward. The universe operates as an infinite, absolute mirror.
A mirror.
It possesses a singular, impartial function, magnification. It takes whatever dominant emotional state and frequency you are broadcasting, and it amplifies it into physical circumstances.
It amplifies the input without prejudice. You know, I always think of it like standing at the edge of a vast, incredibly deep, echoing canyon.
That's a great image.
If you walk up to the edge of that canyon and you shout words of despair, anger, and victimization, the canyon does not evaluate your moral character.
It doesn't judge you.
No.
Right.
It does not look down at you, see that you have had a rough childhood, and think, oh, this person has had a really tough time. They are hurting. Let me absorb that anger and send back a comforting, gentle whisper.
No. The canyon possesses no sentimentality.
It just bounces the exact same despair back at you, but with 10 times the intensity. It echoes from every rock face. It surrounds you. The universe is not a judge sitting on a cloud weighing your good deeds against your bad deeds. It is that canyon. It just mirrors the acoustics of your soul.
That analogy perfectly captures the mechanism.
Yeah.
The universe essentially agrees with whatever frequency you broadcast.
Yeah.
It is a system of absolute validation.
Validate.
If a consciousness harbors deep-seated feelings of hardship, or believes at a core level that life is fundamentally an unfair struggle, the fabric of reality will orchestrate a vast constellation of circumstances to perpetuate and validate those exact feelings.
So it provides evidence.
It supplies an endless tide of evidence to maintain the illusion you have accepted as truth. Because your brain's reticular activating system is tuned to that frequency, it will filter out every opportunity, every kind person, and every stroke of luck.
And it will zero in exclusively on the threats, the insults, and the failures.
Yes.
And then the metaphysical mirror magnifies that focus. If you feel like a victim, the universe will ensure you continuously meet people who victimize you.
You become a magnet for it.
Right. If you feel like existence is a relentless struggle, the universe will break your car radiator on the exact day your rent is due, delay your promotion, and make sure the struggle is meticulously maintained. It validates the frequency.
And this reveals the greatest, most tragic misstep in human evolution. It is the error we all make. We spend our entire lives attempting to manipulate the echo rather than changing the shout.
Attempting to manipulate the echo. Man, that hits hard.
We run around the canyon trying to catch the sound waves.
We really do. We try to muffle the echo by frantically rearranging our physical circumstances. We think, if I just get a new job, the anxiety will stop.
If I leave this partner and find a new one, I will finally feel loved.
If I move to a new city, my life will begin. But wherever we go, we are still standing at the edge of the canyon, shouting the exact same frequency of lack or fear or unworthiness.
And so, within a few months, the new job becomes just as toxic as the old one.
The new partner triggers the exact same insecurities.
The new city feels just as isolating.
You change the furniture, but you are still in the same house. Mastering the self, mastering the internal shout, is the non-negotiable prerequisite to mastering external conditions. You cannot bend the universe to your will until you have submitted to mastering your own internal state.
It is an immutable law. The reflection cannot change until the object tasking the reflection changes.
Okay, so if the universe ruthlessly magnifies our inner state, we have to perform a surgical dissection of the specific shouts we are sending into the canyon.
We need to identify the corruptors.
Right. We need to look deeply at these invisible contagions we are unknowingly projecting into the cosmic mirror. The analysis outlines 5 primary afflictions. Let's dissect the first 2, which seem to act as the acute, immediate disruptors: fear and worry.
Let us begin with fear. This is perhaps the most misunderstood mechanism in the human experience.
How so?
Most people view fear merely as a biological reaction to a threat, a reflex. You see a shadow in the alley, your heart races.
It's adrenals.
But metaphysically, fear is not just a reaction. It is a highly potent, attractive field.
An attractive field, meaning it operates like a gravitational pull. It draws things in. How does an emotion pull physical events into reality?
We have to remember that emotion is energy in motion. It is the fuel that powers materialization.
Right.
Your thoughts provide the blueprint. But your emotions provide the heavy machinery that builds the house. Intense fear functions as a dark, inverted form of creation.
Because you're feeling it so strongly.
Yes, because when you are deeply afraid of something, you are concentrating a massive magnitude of emotional energy onto that specific disastrous outcome.
You are obsessing over it, visualizing it in high definition.
Exactly. You are literally rehearsing the disaster. Now, the critical flaw in human perception is that we think the universe understands the concepts of no or don't.
Oh, like when we say, I don't want this.
Right. We think, I do not want to go bankrupt. I am focusing so hard on not going bankrupt.
But the universe doesn't hear the not.
It only processes the concentration of energy. It sees a massive spotlight of intensely vibrating emotional energy, illuminating the concept of bankruptcy.
Oh, wow.
By focusing intensely on what you wish to avoid, you're actually drawing that exact dreaded outcome into existence. You're giving it life.
It's the classic driving analogy.
How's that go?
If you are driving a car and it starts skidding on ice, scored a guardrail, the first thing any defensive driving instructor will tell you is, do not stare at the guardrail.
Target fixation.
Target fixation. If you stare at the obstacle you are terrified of hitting, your hands will unconsciously steer the wheel directly into it. You have to look at the open road where you want to go. Reality materializes whatever is felt with the greatest intensity, regardless of whether you are craving it or dreading it.
Precisely. Fear normalizes the presence of the threat in your energetic field. It takes a hypothetical possibility and turns it into a structural blueprint for reality to follow.
That is terrifying.
And closely related to this acute panic is the second contagion.
Worry. This one feels so insidious because it is so incredibly common.
It's everywhere.
While fear is often acute, a spike of terror focused on a specific outcome, worry is chronic. It is a low-grade hum of background anxiety. I worry about my kids, I worry about the economy, I worry about getting sick.
It's the ambient noise of modern life.
It really is, and it feels responsible to worry. Society almost demands it. If you aren't worried, people think you are naive.
That normalization is exactly what makes it such a successful contagion. It hides in plain sight, masquerading as responsibility or care.
Right.
But its metaphysical implications are devastating. Fundamentally, worry represents a profound disconnection from infinite intelligence.
Explain that disconnection. How does worrying about my electric bill disconnect me from infinite intelligence?
Because it binds your mind strictly to the realm of physical illusions. When you worry, you are essentially declaring on a vibratory level that you are entirely isolated from the universal flow.
Okay.
You are broadcasting the belief, I am entirely alone in this, the universe is a hostile or indifferent place, and I am not supported.
Wow. I'm not supported. That is the core frequency of worry.
Yes, it is a massive egoic attachment. It is the ego insisting that it must navigate the grand, infinitely complex architecture of reality using only its limited, primal deductive logic.
Which is impossible. Utterly. You disconnect from the vast unseen forces that constantly orchestrate creation behind the scenes, and you try to control the entire ocean by anxiously trying to direct the path of every single drop of water. It is an impossible, exhausting task.
And because of the law of magnification, when you broadcast that frequency of unsupported, isolated anxiety, the universe says, okay, you believe you are alone and everything is on your shoulders. Let me give you an unending stream of circumstances to justify that burden. It magnifies the worry.
It gives you more to manage.
But hold on, let me play devil's advocate here because we are still human beings in biological bodies. The machinery is going to react.
Of course.
If a sudden, fleeting thought of fear crosses my mind, let's say I am walking down the street feeling great and out of nowhere a thought pops up. What if the company downsizes and I lose my job?
Does that one thought instantly doom my reality? Am I suddenly broadcasting a dark, attractive field? How do we differentiate between a passing shadow of instinct and a reality-corrupting frequency? Because if we have to police every single micro-thought, that is just going to generate 1,000 times more anxiety.
That is a crucial distinction to make. And attempting to aggressively police every fleeting thought will indeed only trap you further in the primal brain's anxiety loop.
Good, I was getting worried there.
We must differentiate between a passing shadow and a structural foundation. A fleeting thought of fear lacks the sustained emotional gravity to collapse a reality. It is a leaf blowing across the yard. The house doesn't fall down because a leaf hit it.
Okay, that is a huge relief. So a thought passing through is harmless.
The danger lies not in the thought arriving, but in the sustained, concentrated intensity you apply to it, the normalization of the dread. When you invite that thought in, pull up a chair for it, Pour the cup of tea and sit with it for hours every day.
Mm.
When you compound it with intense, not in your stomach emotion, that is when it solidifies.
It takes root.
It crystallizes into a frequency powerful enough to act as a universal blueprint. It is not the thought that crosses your mind. It is the thought that takes up residence and builds a home there.
You let the leaf turn into a root system. Okay, so fear and worry are these active, loud disruptions. They are the storms.
Yes.
But the analysis points out 3 other contagions that seem to operate more quietly. They act like chronic structural decay to the mind's creative potential: scarcity, doubt, and shame.
Yes. If fear and worry are the storm raging outside the ship, scarcity, doubt, and shame are the silent rot spreading through the wood of the hull. They are paradigms of existence.
Let us examine scarcity first. When I hear scarcity, I immediately think of money, not having enough in the bank.
That is its most common physical manifestation. But scarcity is not merely a lack of physical resources. It is a comprehensive paradigm of perception.
How so?
It acts as a rigid, invisible fence around one's potential. Scarcity is a way of viewing the cosmos as a finite pie. It is the belief that the universe operates on a zero-sum game, where another person's success, wealth, or happiness inherently means there is less available for you.
A fence built from normalizing lack.
Precisely. When an individual normalizes hardship, when they absorb the societal programming that life is just a struggle, or money doesn't grow on trees, or you can't have it all, they accept a deeply corrupted baseline of existence.
They lower the ceiling.
They set the boundaries of their reality artificially low. They lock the gate from the inside. And the universe, acting as the perfect, impartial mirror, honors that fence. It will never force abundance upon a mind that insists upon scarcity.
It is like insisting on breathing through a tiny, restrictive plastic straw while standing in the middle of a vast, pristine, open forest.
That's a profound image.
The oxygen around you is completely limitless. It is abundant beyond measure. But you have convinced yourself that the tiny straw is the only legitimate way to take in air.
And you suffocate despite the abundance.
Right. You don't merely possess the idea of scarcity. The idea of scarcity possesses you. It operates as an autonomous entity dictating the boundaries of your world.
That is an incredibly astute way to phrase it. It is an idea that has claimed ownership of your perception. Every time an opportunity presents itself, the scarcity paradigm filters it out or finds a reason why it won't work.
And what about doubt?
Moving to the next contagion, doubt. We see an affliction that attacks the very mechanism of creation itself. Doubt is the direct denial of the self's inherent power.
But wait, isn't a little skepticism healthy? If someone pitches me a bridge to buy, I should doubt them, right? We need critical thinking.
Skepticism of external claims is intellect. It is the appropriate use of logic to navigate the physical world.
Okay, so that's different.
Very different. Doubt, as a metaphysical contagion, is not about questioning a bad business deal. It is the internal doubting of your own capacity to shape reality. It's a metaphysical severing.
A severing of what?
Because the human mind is a microcosm of the whole. Because you are intimately connected to the architecture of creation. To doubt the self is to doubt the foundational structure of the universe itself.
You are doubting the very machine you are operating.
Exactly. If you do not believe, at a core vibratory level, that you possess the capacity to alter your reality, the mirror of the universe reflects that exact inability.
So it manifests your doubt.
You effectively manifest a reality where your manifestations intentionally do not work. It is the ultimate paradoxical self-fulfilling prophecy. You use your immense creative power to create a reality where you have no creative power.
You manifest impotence. You prove to yourself that you are powerless, and the universe echoes back. As you wish, here is your powerlessness. Here's another situation where you have no control.
It is a tragic use of human potential.
That leaves us with the final and perhaps most insidious of the 5 afflictions: shame.
Shame is a highly corrosive frequency. It is fundamentally different from the others.
In what way?
While fear projects outward toward future events, and worry projects outward toward circumstances, shame collapses entirely inward. It attacks the core identity. It actively destroys the energetic architecture from the inside out.
So it's an internal attack.
Shame is the persistent, agonizing, deeply buried belief that you are fundamentally flawed, broken, and utterly unworthy of the reality you desire.
It is the ultimate anchor holding the ship back. It doesn't matter how hard you row if you secretly believe you don't deserve to reach the shore.
Wise.
It really is like a slow-acting rust compromising the hull of a mighty vessel. It is rarely the storm outside that sinks the ship. It is the invisible structural integrity failing from within.
And what do we do about that rest?
We try so hard to hide it with a fresh coat of paint. We overcompensate. We strive for massive physical achievements. We buy the expensive clothes. We post the perfectly curated photos. We smile and act confident. But the ocean always finds the weakness in the hull.
It always finds the weakness. And the most dangerous aspect of shame is how our society trains us to handle it. We are taught to repress it, to hide it, to never speak of it.
Stuff it down.
But repressing shame does not destroy it. Metaphysically, repressing an emotion simply plants it in the dark, fertile soil of the subconscious.
Like a seed.
Down there, beyond the reach of rational thought, it germinates, it spreads its roots. It becomes the silent, absolute architect of self-sabotage.
This is why people blow up their own lives.
Yes, because if you secretly harbor the frequency of unworthiness, the law of magnification ensures that the universe will provide the corrosive salt water to validate that rust.
Oh, that's brutal.
The universe will orchestrate betrayals, it will arrange for massive failures at the 11th hour, and it will draw in circumstances that continuously validate that internal feeling of being fundamentally broken.
You will build an empire piece by piece, only to tear it down yourself with a string of terrible decisions, simply because your internal frequency dictates that you do not deserve to sit on the throne.
Exactly. The environment must match the identity.
That is heavy. So we have this fundamental quintet: fear, worry, scarcity, doubt, and shame. They trap us in the primal brain, they scramble our energetic signal, and the universe impassively magnifies that corrupted frequency into a physical reality that keeps us trapped.
It is a closed circuit.
It feels like a flawlessly designed, inescapable prison. The walls are made of mirrors, and every mirror is reflecting our own worst programming.
It can certainly feel inescapable.
So the critical question, the absolute turning point of this entire exploration, is how do we get out? How does one eradicate these deep-seated contagions? Because our instinct, the Newtonian instinct we talked about at the beginning, is to fight them.
Right. Use force.
We declare war on our fear, to aggressively battle our doubt.
And that instinct is the ultimate trap.
Really?
Fighting the contagions ensures your permanent imprisonment.
Okay, you have to explain that.
To understand the escape, we must look at a higher level of universal mechanics. We must look to the ultimate transmutation. The answer lies not in destruction, but in alchemy.
Alchemy.
To grasp this, we have to deeply examine the Hermetic principle of polarity.
The law of polarity. Let's break this down because it sounds esoteric. What does that actually mean in the context of getting out of the bunker and steering the ship?
The principle of polarity reveals a profound truth about the nature of existence. Absolute opposites are, in truth, the exact same energy. The only difference is the rate at which that energy is vibrating along a single spectrum.
Okay, my logical brain is throwing an error code again.
Let's hear it.
Fear and courage are the same thing. Poverty and wealth are the same thing. That sounds like a riddle designed to confuse people.
It is not a riddle. It is physics applied to metaphysics. Think of the concept of temperature.
Okay, temperature.
Hot and cold are not two entirely different, opposing substances battling each other in the atmosphere. There is no such thing as a cold energy particle and a hot energy particle.
Okay, it's just thermal energy.
It is all simply thermal energy. The only difference between a state of freezing cold and a state of boiling heat is the vibratory rate of the molecules on that single pole, that single spectrum.
Okay, I see. If the molecules vibrate slowly, we experience it as cold. If they vibrate rapidly, we experience it as heat. But it is the exact same underlying stuff.
Yes. The third-dimensional reality we inhabit forces our brains to perceive separation and duality. We categorize everything into warring factions: good and bad, light and dark, rich and poor, sickness and health.
We split everything in two.
But at the highest level of universal mechanics, everything is unified. Therefore, fear and courage are not opposing forces. They are the exact same energy.
Wait, really?
Yes, worry and peace are the same energy. Scarcity and abundance, doubt and certainty, shame and pride, these are not separate things. They are identical streams of energy on a single spectrum.
So if they are the exact same energy to conquer an affliction like fear, you cannot possibly battle it. If you draw a sword to fight fear, if you clench your jaw and scream, "I am not going to be afraid," you are taking all your vital, creative energy and pouring it directly into the concept of fear. You are amplifying the static.
Exactly. What you resist persists. It is a universal law. Fighting fear just makes the fear denser, heavier, and more physically materialized. You are adding mass to it.
So what's the alternative?
Instead, the alchemical process, the true transmutation, requires you to simply slide your awareness along the pole to the higher vibratory state.
Slide the awareness.
The only difference between a state of complete ruin and a state of absolute triumph is the rate of vibration. You do not destroy the cold. You accelerate its vibration until it becomes heat. You do not destroy fear. You raise its frequency until it translates as courage.
I understand the physics analogy, but I have to challenge the practicality of this in the real world.
Please do.
It sounds incredibly beautiful in theory. Just slide the dial from fear to courage. Just turn up the thermostat of your soul. But when you are in the trenches of human experience, when the bank account is genuinely empty, or the medical diagnosis is terrifying, or a 10-year marriage suddenly falls apart, fear and courage feel worlds apart.
You feel like opposite ends of the universe.
Exactly. They feel like completely different universes.
Yeah.
How does a mind that is currently paralyzed by a mountain of doubt actually, practically, physically, or mentally, traverse that infinite spectrum? How do you move the dial when you are freezing to death?
That is the defining challenge of human existence. It is the crucible where mastery is forged. And the shift is never made through brute force.
Okay.
You do not leap from absolute terror to absolute courage in a single heroic bound. Nor is it achieved through toxic positivity, where you stand in front of a mirror and frantically lie to yourself, shouting, "I am abundant," while your stomach is tied in knots of panic.
Right. The subconscious mind rejects the lie, and the universe magnifies the underlying panic.
You cannot trick the mirror. The transition is made through the highly precise, almost surgical application of the mind's most potent yet most thoroughly misunderstood tool.
The master key.
Yes, the master key of concentration.
Concentration.
The mechanism that allows consciousness to actually slide along the pole of duality and transmute the energy is singular and absolute. Vibration is entirely dictated by concentration.
Where attention goes, energy flows.
Precisely. Where attention is centralized, energy crystallizes and takes physical form.
Yeah.
To alter the vibratory rate of your mind, to physically move from the frequency of fear to the frequency of courage, you must fundamentally alter what you concentrate upon.
But people always say, I just can't focus. My mind is too scattered.
But the human mind does not lack the ability to focus. We have an immense, almost terrifying capacity for concentration.
Yeah.
Think about how intensely an individual can focus on a perceived insult. They can replay a 10-second interaction in their mind for 3 consecutive weeks, analyzing every syllable, generating intense anger and shame.
Oh, wow. That's so true. We are master meditators. We are just meditating on our misery.
Exactly.
We have this immense battery of energy, but we are unknowingly allocating the lion's share of it toward the exact contagions we are trying to escape. We are constantly concentrating on the lack, the threat, the potential failure, the shame of the past.
Yes. We are holding our concentration firmly on the cold end of the thermometer.
So the secret to sliding the dial from fear to courage is not to manufacture a false, grandiose bravery about the massive, terrifying obstacle in front of you. That is too far of a leap.
Far too far.
The secret is to aggressively withdraw your attention from the problem and redirect your focus toward the smallest, most microscopic elements of your existence, where you already naturally feel a solitary spark of courage, or a solitary spark of abundance.
That is the alchemy.
So you don't tackle the mountain right away, you find a pebble. You find a pebble of certainty.
Exactly. You find one tiny, undeniable aspect of your life where the frequency is already pure, where you feel completely safe or inherently abundant or undeniably capable.
Give me an example.
It might be something so mundane you usually ignore it. It might be your absolute certainty in your ability to make a perfect cup of coffee.
Seriously, just making coffee.
Yes. Or it might be the warmth of the sun on your face through a window. It might be the fact that your lungs are effortlessly pulling in oxygen without you having to ask them to.
Yeah.
You take your immense laser-like capacity for concentration and you centralize it entirely on that small, uncorrupted truth. You rest your awareness there.
And because of the law of magnification, the universe doesn't evaluate the size of the object you are focusing on. It only evaluates the frequency.
It does not care about the physical size or the importance of the focus. It only measures the purity and intensity of the vibratory rate.
So what happens when you hold that focus?
When you centralize your energy on that small truth of abundance or peace, you activate the mirror. The law of magnification takes over. The universe catches that solitary spark of pure, uncorrupted frequency, and it immediately begins to orchestrate the circumstances to blow it into a raging fire.
The echo comes back louder.
It begins to supply evidence of your capability, evidence of your abundance. Your overall vibratory rate begins to rise, sliding naturally and effortlessly along the pole from cold to hot.
It's like realizing you have been starving to death at a massive, incredibly lavish banquet simply because you were staring exclusively at the one empty plate on the table.
The food is everywhere.
The abundance is all around you, but your concentration was locked on the void, and you were convinced the void was the entire world.
And that conviction became your reality.
We don't need to build new, complex mechanisms to change our lives. We must unlearn the heavily armored, stressful defenses we have built and return to the pure, unfiltered perception of an open mind. We just have to move our eyes to the food.
That is the ultimate revelation of this entire philosophy. True power is found in subtraction, not addition.
Subtraction.
You do not need to learn 10 more rigid, exhausting techniques to manipulate reality. You do not need to read 50 more books on strategy. You must unlearn the mental contagions.
Let them go.
You must consciously withdraw your attention, your life force, from the illusions of scarcity and fear. By choosing your concentration, you actively choose your vibration. And by choosing your vibration, you dictate the physical manifestation of reality. The environment is never a cage. It is always a mirror.
And realizing that requires a level of radical self-honesty that, frankly, most people are simply not prepared for. It is a heavy mantle to pick up.
It means total accountability.
It means acknowledging that every individual is a true microcosm of the cosmos. It means abandoning the comfort of victimhood. Any desire to bend the universe to your will, to shape your career, your relationships, your health, your legacy, must begin with the total submission and absolute mastery of the internal self.
You cannot demand the reflection change while you refuse to alter the object casting the reflection.
It is the ultimate responsibility. There is no external authority to blame when things go wrong, but equally there is absolutely no limit to what can be created when things align.
The universe is infinitely pliable. It is waiting for your instruction, and it listens exclusively to the language of your concentrated vibration.
So we return to the image of the ship, fighting the endless tide. You are exhausted at the helm, but now you know the truth.
The invisible wall you are hitting is not the ocean rejecting you.
The ocean has no preference. It is reflecting the anchor you didn't know you dropped. The contagions of fear, worry, scarcity, doubt, and shame. Those are the heavy iron chains dragging beneath the surface, catching on the rocks of the primal mind.
So how do you move forward?
To truly master the architecture of reality, you don't row harder, you don't scream at the wind, you step back from the helm, you look within. And you use the master key of concentration to withdraw your energy from the chains, transmuting that heavy, rusting iron into the light, invisible wind that finally fills your sails.
And the most beautiful part of the mechanics is this. The moment that internal shift genuinely occurs, the moment the frequency slides up the pole, the external tide turns instantly.
The mirror has no choice.
The reflection must honor the new form. The reality must materialize the new frequency.
Which leaves us with this final reality-altering question for you to ponder in the quiet moments after this conversation ends. If every passing moment of your concentration is instantly echoing through the architecture of reality, acting as a blueprint and actively building tomorrow's world, what single microscopic shift in your attention could you make right at this exact second that would trigger an endless tide of abundance by morning?